You're listening to the Van Isle Podcast at the Globe Live Studio. Now, here are your hosts, Darcy McBride and Corey Rasmussen, with the man turning the dials, Bryce Hills.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Van Isle Pod. It's your host, Darcy McBride, aka Details. We're hanging out once again at the Globe Live Studio. And we want to thank you for joining us again. You might have saw our pilot episode. Ryan McMahon came in. We had a lot of fun with him here, and I want to thank him again for that. Today, I'm joined by a pair of guests, and you know what? One of them's a guest, and one of them is my co-host, and I'm excited to introduce them to you. Of course, we missed you last time out, Cora, and we welcome you as well to the set, and my teammate here riding with me for the Van Isle Pod.
What's up, everybody? It's Corey Rasmussen. Some of you out there know me as Coyote Corey. And just teaming up here with Details to bring you guys the Van Isle Podcast.
Absolutely. And, you know, one thing that we're really putting an effort on here is to do things that are highlighting local topics of interest, whether it is inside or outside music and entertainment, which is typically where I live in terms of workspace. And today I'm really excited to welcome somebody to the show who's not only somebody I've worked with in the past, somebody I call a colleague and a friend, but somebody with a wealth of information on a topic that we have a lot of discussion about in our province. So I want to welcome Justin Zubkowski, major projects construction manager with several different oil field outlets and somebody with 20 years experience in various stages of the oil field. So, man, welcome to the pod.
Welcome to the Van Isle Pod, man.
So we're going to jump right into it here. This is something that, we see a lot of different displays of the oil field out here, whether it's people who work away, working from here, people that see it on TV and have never been on site. Tell us a little bit about who you are before we get into the meat and potatoes here. How did you find your way into the industry, and what are you doing right now?
Yeah, I guess I could thank my parents for putting some pressure on me while I was young. Kind of hitting that grade 11 age, getting ready for grade 12. I started getting the pressure to start, maybe picking a career or start, thinking about it a little bit more. I had family in the oil field. My grandpa worked in the oil field, was a carpenter. My dad did his fair amount on the pipeline as well. I got cousins and family growing up in Alberta, the majority of my family have at least tried it. That pressure, coming from a small Alberta town, you kind of fall back on the trades, working with your hands, getting dirty. So I kind of made that decision to, go into welding. The high school I was in, accommodated me a little bit more than maybe most do. And kind of just led into the pipeline industry, and then kind of, through hard work, kind of got to where I am today.
Yeah, from what I understand, you're like poster child for starting at the bottom and kind of working your way up. So like literally starting at the bottom, getting your hands dirty, feet dirty, those long hours like you hear about, oil workers. So
yeah. I found it was even tougher for me. My cousin helped me get started on the pipeline, and the fear of nepotism, kind of made it so that I had it a bit tougher than others. I never got the raises because people would, complain that it was because I was family, right? So I found that I had it a little bit harder, but I think that's half of the reason why I'm where I'm at now. It started with dirty hands. Like I'm not an engineer. Generally, people in my position are engineers, probably 90% of the time or more.
Yeah.
It was just hard work and dedication. I mean, anybody can do it, right? You just put in that effort and work a little bit harder. And
so you were Armstrong in it for a long time, doing the labor end of it. You got into welding, got into doing a little bit more of whether it was inspecting welding and doing physical welding yourself. And now you're into a position where you're managing projects. And so you've kind of seen the whole scope of it in a short form. What is it that you do now? What does a typical day look like, and what kind of stuff are you overseeing?
Typical day. Well, about 100 emails. I mean, that keeps me pretty busy.
Right.
There's no such thing as a holiday. Even when I go away for a week or something, I'm checking emails every day because it just gets overwhelming, right? You come back to 1,000 and it takes you a month to catch up. And in that month, you've got another 1,000. So a lot of emails, a lot of meetings, starting a project in the feed phase, so front end engineering design, you kind of get at that point where before you get to detail design and into execution. So a lot of the front end work, environmental work, Canada's probably the strictest country in the world when it comes to environmental policy and regulation. So, dealing with the regulatory bodies, permitting, environmental office certificates, and then just starting to, put a project management plan together to try to get that buy-in from corporate to see if they want to spend that capital money on this project. It's actually quite crazy. A project nowadays, a bigger project, a major project, takes 10 years to get going, right? So in that 10 years, it's a lot of administration work.
It's a lot of foresight too. You're not looking exactly at what's in front of you. You have to be looking down the road a fair bit. And with that, I'm sure comes different concerns, whether it's nature related or economy related, but that has to be an angle of it, I'm guessing, when you're dealing with numbers that big.
Yeah. And a lot of it's pie in the sky, right? You're estimating, you're guessing, but you need a plan. You need something to work towards, right? So yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell.
It's nice. It's nice to hear about like you said, Canada's pretty strict when it comes to the regulations and stuff like that, because I mean, there's a lot of pushback from, obviously there's a lot of pushback from different groups, or protesting and stuff like that. So that's refreshing to hear. That's something I didn't know, that Canada is one of the strictest. And
I think actually the strictest, to be honest. Yeah. Half the reason why it takes so long to get a project off the ground. It's obviously good, but it can be frustrating at times.
Well, I can imagine.
But it also kind of breeds that fact of, why aren't we supplying the world with more Canadian oil and energy? We are the cleanest, and we ensure that through regulation. So
I'm going to ask this now, and I was going to wait till later, but refineries, we've heard discussions about refineries in Canada. How would that change it? Because we're sitting here with one of the greatest and, like you say, cleanest deposits, but we have one of the highest fuel prices. What does that correlation look like?
Well, the high fuel price is a frustrating thing, because, you watch the price of oil go up, and generally the price at the pump goes up, but the government takes advantage of that. Like, why did gas prices go up on a long weekend? Oil prices didn't go up that weekend. So that's a little frustrating for me. I always say, like, the price at the pumps doesn't bother me, because it does feed my family and puts a roof over my head. But at the same time, it is frustrating when you're like, they're just profiting more because they learned that they could when oil was high. So why not keep that price high when oil's down?
Supply and command, as Ricky from Trailer Park Boys would say.
Yeah, supply and command.
But also it's refreshing. I think a lot of people are mistaken of people who might stand against. They're confused at who the bad guy is. For lack of a better word, I should say
Misinformation,
exactly,
or lack of research, or just not wanting to listen. For the majority of people, you can't change somebody's mind; they just don't want to listen.
What do you think is the most commonly misunderstood or mistaken, aspect or angle of that field in itself? Is there one that, kind of is extra, like, I could disprove this in a minute type of thing? Or is there a collection of beliefs that, having been out there for so long, and we'll get into me and you working out there in a little while, my personal, because I know that I do, but for you, excuse me, somebody that's been at it for as long as you have, what is the main thing that you typically try to sway somebody's opinion on when there's somebody who hasn't worked out there, who has formed an opinion?
Well, I mean, there's a few. One is the whole electric car business, and strip mines. They're stopping strip mines because environmental concerns and climate change, but we're increasing strip mines to get materials to build batteries, and they're not ethical. They say they are, but you go out to Alberta and you look at a drilling rig, and it's a bunch of grown men and grown women out there working. You go to a strip mine somewhere in a third world country, and they got children out there. They say they don't. People are very adamant about buying ethically sourced coffee, but they're okay to buy an electric car. That
diamonds too, same way these days you have lab growns to take away from that blood diamond trade. But yeah, that's a good point.
Same thing, right? And another one that really irks me is the way that people assume that oil field workers come to your community, and all of a sudden the community is going to become the Wild West. There's going to be shootouts and there's going to be fights, all this stuff. And it's tough to be a construction worker and consider yourself a professional and hear those things. It's demeaning. And if anything, we're boosting the economy in those communities. You know, we leave legacy things. It will come into a community, we'll build you a hockey rink, a park, fix your roads. We do all those things, but it gets overlooked because there was a fist fight in the bar one weekend. Or, I mean, you bring 600 oil field workers. It doesn't matter if you bring 600 hockey players, 600 military. There's going to be
You're going to find somebody in that number of people.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
With managing these types of jobs, and we'll get more into the culture in a little while. We'll talk about some personal experience, but I really want to be able to let people wrap their heads around, you know, what it is again that you do on a day-to-day basis. So the most challenging thing with managing a massive construction project, is it getting it off the ground? And I mean, we'll speak, Corey, you know, is First Nations descent, and we're going to speak a little bit about the relations with the First Nations, because obviously with Trans Mountain, which I know isn't something that you're directly involved with, but it is kind of on your rink of play. You know, those kinds of things with the challenges therein. Is it manpower? Is it finding people who have that work ethic in 2023? Or is it all pen and paper, you know, clean shoes in the office type challenges that are the biggest challenges these days?
I think it's all encompassing, to be honest. But people, like you said, when you are out in execution, managing people is tough, and it's frustrating at times. You feel like you're babysitting grown adults. You know, I can't come to work today because I got in a fight with my wife. Well, you know what? I don't care. Like, we need you at work. Like, you committed to be here.
And you're getting paid. You're getting paid handsomely to be there too, in most cases.
In all cases, you know. But it is all encompassing, right? Everything has its challenges. Like I said, with Canada being as restricted as it is when it comes to the environment and those things. I mean, there's headwinds on everything you do.
I know that, I mean, I can ask you about a bunch of stuff that's firsthand experience type stuff, but what I think is most interesting is to know that, like, the perception of you, like you said, you come in and destroy something and leave it worse than you found it. But I've seen firsthand a lot of the times places are left as good or structurally better than when you found them. If there's some uneven place that you're going to turn into a lease and it's used for its production of that fluid, that oil, bitumen, whatever it is you're pulling up. And at the end of it, there's nothing but absolute flat land, and it's been all, you know, reforested or regrowth, or you see right of ways where, you know, and a right of way, if you're not familiar, is the actual term for the piece of, you know, property that runs where you're putting this pipe in the ground. It ends up, you'll see them when you listen to this and you end up driving around, you'll see it. It's all being regrown with vegetation. Like, none of it looks like, you know, Mr. Burns' nuclear lab on The Simpsons type of thing, in that sense. And, you know, that's something that I've tried to educate people on is that difference. And is that something that you guys pride yourself on when doing construction, like you say, is to leave it better than you found it, to just really curb that misinformation that seems to find its way in?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, right? Going through a farmer's field, you know, you replace his fences, you remove the rocks that you turned up, and more. You do those things for the landowners, and it all falls back on how we manage our projects in Canada and Western Canada, the importance of the environment. You know, you leave a right of way that you leave it even a different topography as it was when you came, and you're gonna affect how the water runs off the hills. You're gonna create additional silt into the creeks, and which will affect fish eggs, and you know, it's domino effect at that point. So yeah, it is. It's reclamation and restoration is 2-3 years of work after you put a project in, you know. You go out and you do a 2-year construction project and you got 3 years of reclamation after, but again, that's what we pride ourselves on, right? And
see, a lot of people don't even know that. Like my man Darcy's outed me, but yeah, I'm on what you call, what was that? The UCI, the undercover Indigenous guy, in this interview. I was going to hit you with the status card, let you know, put on the pressure. But no, I came into this interview quite neutral because I got a brain in my head. At least that's what I tell myself anyway. And so I didn't want to hit you. It's just a little fun there.
When you're routing those right-of-ways, what kind of things are you initiating to speak to different, would it be tribes or bands or you know, different sections of these nations? Yeah, different nations. Yeah, okay. So what's the process to go through and go about that? I know I've heard a little bit about it, but I mean, it'd be interesting to me, but this is
and from what I understand, it's different from territory to territory as well. But when it comes to First Nations communities, I mean, it's no secret, you guys, like, there's pushback, but not everybody shares that view also. So in that realm of Indigenous relations, what does that look like? Like, what does that look like? And I know that I know we're skating on controversial, and that's not the type of pressure that I want to put on you at all. But I mean, it's still a thing. So I mean, feel free to be as brief or as detailed as you like.
I don't mind talking about it. You know, I think we can do better, and I don't. When I say we, I don't just mean our side. I mean, I think the nations can do better as well. Mm-hmm. They are self-governing, right? Like, and like you said, each nation's different. Some don't want to be involved. Some just say, "Hey, like, go ahead." And others are very involved. You know, generally there's some sort of an impact agreement. You know, we'll look to support, you know, a percentage of hires. We'll look to train. You know, guarantee. We'll start the training from the beginning of say an apprenticeship, and we'll see it through. If the project's only a year, that's fine. We'll pay for the education and support that through, you know, the 4 years of apprenticeship or whatever it may be.
Yeah. For employment of Indigenous.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and then other benefits. You know, legacy. Like I said, legacy stuff. You know, hey, we're gonna put a camp on this project in the valley, and hey, would it benefit you guys to leave that out there? Can you use it for your operations? You know, where I've seen, you know, issues when I say maybe we can all do better is there's the same bureaucracy in nations as there is in our government. So, you know, one nation I worked with up in northern Alberta, one of the richest nations in Western Canada, if not Canada, but couldn't spend the money because nobody would agree on to what spend it. Some people wanted a new school, some people wanted a hockey rink, conference center, whatever, but no one can agree, so the money doesn't get spent, right? So I mean, it's good that the money's there. But I think everybody can just do a little bit better.
Human behavior is human behavior, right?
And you'd see, you know, some of the living conditions were bad.
Yeah.
You know, but you're like, you know, the nation has money. But
that's what I was going to say. So when you're bartering these deals, these are agreements to do everything from what we were doing, which is having, I use some terms here that might not be familiar, but having the sloop with the welder on it getting pulled across a farmland, and everybody's doing their job in terms of, you know, the bead, the cap, the finish, everything that's going on the foot. You're doing that. Plus you're probably drilling underneath, and we'll get into this because this is super cool. I want you to let everybody know kind of how you drill under a creek and put something in with little to no impact. But all of those things and routing through, I remember you had told me recently there was one where there was a really significant patch of trees and a tree line and some really important land that you had to make that kind of deal over. And that was, you know, in hockey terms, it's like trying to trade draft picks and players. Here you're trying to route through non-sacred lands and through places of low impact. And is that kind of all in the scope when you're making this deal? Plus the fact that obviously the business, whoever owns that pipe, is going to profit. So they're going to have to pay a portion of that profits to whoever the territory is as well. Like, am I touching on most of it or missing anything that comes into that negotiation that people might not think?
It's a tough question to answer. But yeah, I mean, the negotiations are wide open when you're starting, right? There's a starting point, and but they're not easy.
What I'm asking, I guess, is like not just what the physical impact on the land will be, but maybe on future potential. Or like, do they get a residual, like a kickback on what that pipe produces, or is it kind of like you get paid for the act and then it's done and that's it?
Yeah, for the most part.
For the most part, that's the way it works.
Yeah, unless you have a stake in the line.
Yeah.
Like you see Trans Mountain, I think there was a couple bands that were looking to buy 50% stake in that pipeline. Again,
So
it's not my project.
make a cut on what's going.
But then
through
they
it.
own, they own it, right? Or 50% of it. So it's like, you know.
Interesting.
Yeah, we can't pretend that there aren't Indigenous, you know, that are benefiting from it too. Some, you know, are hollering sacred, and others are hollering, you know, where's that paper again? So
yeah, you know, and that's an interesting one when you look at the CGL pipeline, which is from Dawson Creek to Kitimat.
Mm-hmm.
Kitimat LNG, and that's we saw all those protests, the Wet'suwet'en protests that were all over the world.
Yeah.
But in reality, every nation agreed to that pipeline.
Yeah.
And every nation benefited from that pipeline. It was a small group of people that made a big disturbance. And then you start getting the buy-ins from people that have no idea what they're talking about, like DiCaprio coming up here, and
Is that PR a real challenge these days, where everybody with a phone is now a broadcaster? They can get 30 seconds of video, put a caption that catches some attention on it, and the next thing you know, you've got a fire to put out when really there's no fire.
It's insane. The protests and how they're trained to agitate guys like me and pipe gang, take a bunch of welders out there, and you get guys in your face screaming and spitting, and you can't do anything.
Yeah.
But they have that phone in your face.
Yeah.
As soon as you make a move, you're sued.
Yeah.
But they're paid agitators.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough. Like,
keeping that PR.
yeah. And then people just, they use it for their numbers. Guys like Caprio, and I have a hard time paying for his movies. I like his movies, but I'm
a big Titanic fan, but you like when Rose pushes him off the door.
ain't no room on this door for you, pal.
We're gonna take a hard turn from there. That was heavy, man. That's some real shit. This is what I like to get out there. Right now, though, it's time for D's notes.
Don't forget these notes.
All right, Al. So last week, on our inaugural episode, I talked about my man Jonah O. I talked about Mr. ESQ and Hercules. This week, I'm going to go a little bit more mainstream with it, because one of my favorite artists, Macklemore, just put out his latest album. It's called Ben. The project's fantastic, guys, if you haven't checked it yet. The final track on the album, it features Moray. You might remember Moray. Last year, he hit it big with Kickstand. That was his big single. Macklemore and Moray with a track called Taillights. That's my mainstream pick for you guys. Something that is a little less under that mainstream and is still a Canadian artist, and you're going to know who I mean. My boy Evil Ebenezer put out a new record here this week. The track is called I'm the Man. It features Mind Flip, and the beat is created by none other than C-Lance. You know who C-Lance is, one of Boston's finest. We don't like the Bruins. We don't like Boston for a lot of things, but I like Bill Burr and I like C-Lance. So on that alone, that recommendation alone, check out Macklemore with Taillights. Check out Evil and Mind Flip, produced by C-Lance. Track's called I'm the Man. That's D's notes.
D's notes.
Okay, so being in the oil field, man, there's a lot of seriousness to this part of your job, but there was a time when you were in high school, so to speak, when you were working in camps. You and I were in Fox Creek working in camp. Best thing and worst thing about camp. Start with the best thing about camp.
This is what I've been waiting to
Start with the
to.
best thing about camp.
I like camp. A lot of people refuse to go to camp. I mean, there's food cooked for you.
I knew that was going to be your first fucking answer too, man. I knew it.
I knew it, dude. Your bed's made. And they're not like they used to be. The first camp I ever stayed in felt like prison. Like it was bad. Shared bathrooms. 2 people to a room.
They call it a Jack and Jill.
No, I mean
not
like
that.
community bathrooms. Like
Jack
don't
and
drop
Jill's
the
where there's
soap.
two rooms with a bathroom in the middle. Damn.
No, we're talking like prison. But two beds to one room. You don't know your guest. Like you don't know who you're gonna be staying with. So you're like some dudes don't shower.
That is like prison. All right.
Like it's rough. No TV. This is back. No TV.
Yeah.
Like nothing.
What's your job description when you have your mind's eye on this time you're talking about? Are you like throwing skids and fucking hustling all manpower Armstrong shit?
Yeah.
God damn. Where were you? Northern Alberta?
No, Northwest Territories, Fort Liard.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I remember you telling me about Fort Liard.
It was a cool job. Yeah, when I first started that job, they're like, hey, you guys, we're working a shift. And pipeline nowadays is different, but back then you just worked, right? Guys would do 160, 200 days straight.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, this job's a shift. I was like, sweet, what is it? 44 and 4. I was like, yeah, it's not much of a shift.
4 days off in a month and a half.
Yeah, and you're fucking 20 hours away from Edmonton.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they did fly us, but yeah, it was the first time I ran into drug dogs. They had drug dogs up there. It was for Chevron. It was a cool job, though. Like, Liard Hot Springs is up there, which is a pretty cool place. And you get to see some pretty cool parts of the world, pipeline, and places that other people don't get to see. You're out in the trees and the sticks. You might sound kind of boring or lame, but it's pretty cool. Some pretty neat rivers and pretty beautiful.
Some of the nature was so cool to see out there, man.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever been up that way and spent any time like in the middle of that rural BC, northern Alberta?
Not rural BC, yeah, but not so much. I just like the idea of like just like you said, it's beautiful, and just wondering, like, am I the first motherfucker who ever stood right here in this spot?
Yeah.
You know, type thing. I get weird about that type of thing. I love that stuff.
That's how you find a cigarette butt on the ground.
Yeah.
Nope.
The middle of BF nowhere.
Unless this bear's buying packs of players, there's already been somebody here.
Yeah. No, that was pretty cool. It was, wild buffalo was the first time I'd seen wild buffalo, and a lot of bears. You'd have bear bangers to scare them away. And
all right, man, what's the worst thing about being in camp? I know I can think of a few things just from our time together, but you've had a few more stays than me.
Yeah, the worst thing about camp, generally I would say the isolation. Depends on how dry the camp is, not being able to have alcohol, seeing the same people every day.
Yeah.
In a smaller camp, working with the same people, then living with the same people, it gets to be tough. I mean, it's hard on friendships. It's hard on professional working relationships. You don't really, generally, there's only a few women to share.
Let's go. Let's go. Now it's a podcast.
When you're a stud like me, usually no, I'm just kidding.
Oh, Jesus. The first lie has been detected, Corey. We've got it. If you're somebody who wants to go out and work in that environment, you want to pack your suitcase up and you want to go live that, it's transient almost, especially if you're pipelining, because for a week you're staying in city A or town A, and then once you start putting pipe together for a few clicks, you're going to stay in the next space. As somebody who's like maybe chasing that dollar, they want to go out and get that paycheck. How do you do it if you're this far away from there?
I mean, now, like, you can't find enough people.
Yeah.
I don't know where everybody went, but you can't find anybody to work at McDonald's. You can't find anybody to now try to find, with the generation we have today, someone that wants to go get their hands dirty and live out of town for 24 days or 17 days with 2 off. You have to have that drive. But honestly, you make a fucking couple phone calls to some companies, some friends. You build a network. Yeah. That's the key. You build a network. Doesn't have to be big. You surround yourself by good people that work hard and are in the industry, and they'll take you with them.
Are the days of going to Nisku outside of Edmonton with your bag of your gear over your shoulder and knocking on doors and trying to get a job with a resume that way, are those days gone, or are those people going to be excited to see someone who went through all the effort to fucking show up on a front door and maybe hire you on the spot?
Boom and bust. You can go through Nisku and it looks like a ghost town, like literally tumbleweeds blowing across the road. Like I've seen it.
Yeah.
Grass growing up around all the buildings, all the trucks that haven't moved for months and months. And then 3 months later, the place is hustling and bustling and can't even find a fucking parking spot.
Yeah.
The airways of the stripper, the stripper
the Saddle
club
Sore out in Rocky Mountain House. Shouts out to Challen Pipeline.
You find the FUBAR boys sitting in there, front row.
They're wealthy men on Peter. They're wealthy men. Something I always say to my buddies out there, and I picked it up along the way out there, and I didn't even have the accident to make me say it, but I always say play safe. I even say it to you when you go to work and stuff like that. Obviously some pretty scary stuff from time to time out there with playing with big equipment, and the bigger the tool, the bigger the equipment, the worse off the injury. Anything that's ever made you fucking jump back and go, maybe I need to not do this anymore, in terms of watching somebody be injured, hurt, or have something happen?
Yeah, what's the wildest shit?
Wildest shit you see?
You're allowed to say.
Too many times and too much to list, man. I think it's dangerous industry. Again, we can always do better. One of my mentors said every accident or every incident's preventable. And it's like, if you live on a fucking rainbow, like, it's preventable if you put in so many, mitigations to the point where you're not getting any work done and everybody's living in a bubble. But it's not realistic. I mean, things are going to happen when you're working with heavy equipment in construction. But you do see it a lot. Like Trans Mountain, they killed a 32-year-old guy in Edmonton last year. 65-year-old inspector got backbladed by a D9 dozer, D8 dozer.
Explain to what that means to somebody who doesn't understand the term backbladed or know what a dozer is.
So when you're leveling grade, when you push the dirt, it's harder to get a real, because of the shape of the blade. You're pushing, with the round edge forward. It tends to dig. It's like backblading with a skid steer, right? Once you put that blade down, you're pulling now the
Sitting it down
The blade
flat to
is-
pull
is-
backwards.
Yeah, exactly. And the blade's going the opposite direction, so it doesn't build up the material.
Yeah.
It kind of goes underneath. And the inspector, generally inspectors are the most experienced guys out there, right? This guy was 65 years old, probably pipelined for 50 years.
Went through
45
probably
years.
a lot of your steps that you've gone through. You know,
Yeah,
in your
yeah,
career.
absolutely. And I don't know why or why he was standing where he was or how he didn't get out of the way fast enough, but it happened to Burnaby and he was backbladed over. It's like, fuck, man, it's scary to think, but he lost his legs waist down.
Mhm.
He lived, but
Wow.
life changing. My eye was hurt. I was hurt really bad in about 2000 in Edson. Young, 18, 19-year-old. Was told, hey, hold the pipe down here. We're gonna go back and lift it back there. Why was I told to fucking hold it down? I don't know. That's what I did because that's what I was told to do. As soon as they lifted it, the pipe swung up
Skipped, yeah.
and caught me. I had pushed off. It swung towards me, and I pushed up off of it. And thank God I did, because it would have caught me in the ribs or in the stomach. And it was about 3,000 pounds, I figured, with pressure. But it caught me on my knees, and it damaged both my knees, ACLs, MCLs, ripped them all. It took them about 3-4 minutes to get the pipe off me. And then, we were an hour and a half from a hospital in Edson. So I had to ride in the back of a crew cab. This is before,
In the fucking back, as
Yeah.
Tron says.
Yeah, exactly. but literally, and dumb and young and tough,
Yeah.
Fuck it, I don't need work safe. I'll
Working
work every
harder
day.
instead of smarter, instead of the other way around.
They're like, if you go home, we're gonna get a strike on our safety record. So I'm like, okay,
Yep.
you can keep me working. So every day, 2 guys would show up at my hotel in Edson, carry me from my room to the back of a crew cab, drive me an hour to work, carry me into the office,
No
and I would
shit.
sit there for 10 hours so that they didn't get a strike on their safety record.
Safe face, yeah.
And now my fucking knees are fucked and I can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Couldn't go back on work safe at the time.
Is that something that's improved, you think? Is that culture of people that are hurt at work it's not as macho anymore? Like, is it more about, like, if something happens, report it? Or do you think that's still something that happens?
Yeah. I think both. I think you got to watch though, because Joe Blow will hurt his back
Yeah.
and doesn't actually hurt his back.
Yeah,
And
right.
takes advantage of the system.
It's an industry where you're getting paid handsomely, so getting paid even 3/4 of that handsome amount to sit at home is pretty appealing if somebody suddenly wants a month off, right?
Yeah. Light duty. I went and I worked for a company and I got my collar broken up. Piece of pipe come down, hit me in my shoulder and broke my collar. Or it separated my ACL on my shoulder. Dislocated, I guess they call it. Well, we'll put you on light duty. What does that mean? Well, you go to the office and you do paperwork. Send me back to Nisku, to head office, and there was like 15 people in there with casts and slings and like,
Like a rehab ward.
they're all on light duty, but nobody gets they don't get a safety strike or not
Yeah.
as much, right? But yeah, no, it's the same thing. We could do better, but it's tough to say. But they're gonna happen.
It teaches you a brotherhood kind of vibe, though, because when you're out there and you're working in that, especially like when you're out in the middle of nowhere, like when we were on those O'Cheese leases and stuff, the First Nation leases near Rocky Mountain House, you're an hour and a half from anything. So it's like you kind of get that whole, like, as if you're out at sea type of mentality where you protect your brothers and you're looking out for your team, because one of you gets fucking hurt out there, it's going to ruin everybody's day. And if it's real bad, then it can get real bad real quick. So it's something that made me better in every angle of what I've done since then, is that spatial awareness and maybe like being sure of something before you do or even say it. And I mean, I owe so much to that culture in terms of my work ethic. And, as I said recently in a post when we advertised and promoted this whole thing, like I kept the 6 a.m. alarm clock and the work ethic. You guys can have the mud and the -40.
Don't ask me to take my decorations off my Christmas tree.
Yeah, dude, I lived in Grand Prairie for a couple of years, and this guy used to frequent out there all the time. I fucking moved in November. We put the tree up right away. Fucking hand to God swear I took the tree down like 20 months later when I moved out. There's snow up there for 9 months out of the year. So what the fuck? Like, it looks like Christmas outside. You might as well keep it. But no, the lessons and some of the stuff I got to learn about, like, it's made me better at everything I've done. I can say that jiu-jitsu and working in the oil field are two of the best life-altering experiences in a positive way that I've definitely ever had. And some of it is culture of it. And, what is oil field culture? There's a lot of people that look at it, oh, it's poisonous and this and that. And some people do end up out there and not doing well for themselves. I myself had the fortunate opposite scenario where I came back losing an addiction after being out there and finding a way to stay in shape and value that paycheck and, really get after it. And there's so many angles that you don't understand that happen out there, all the way to the point of pop music. I mean, I've got All Hell for a Basement written here, and a band named Big Sugar, Canadian band, who my boy Andrew Roberts at Got Pop is promoting them in Nanaimo. Go see them. They're going to be at the Queens.
I think tickets went on sale today.
Did they? Okay.
I think so.
No, I think it's Friday, the 10th,
Okay.
Friday, March 10th, which will be before you see this. But still, there's songs dedicated to that culture of the oil field. So when someone says oil field culture to you, how would you explain it?
Well, camaraderie. Like, I have lifelong friends from it. And like you said, it breeds that hardworking. That's a tough one, like you said, some people do well and some people struggle, right? When they get that kind of money.
Yeah. Or like you said, being alone and being kind of isolated out there.
Yeah. It's a different lifestyle. A lot of money, a lot of drugs.
Well, let's be honest. There is a stereotype. Like like patch workers, oil field workers. There's that stereotype: big white pickup, matching white shades.
Don't you drive a white Dodge? Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, big one. Big one.
You know what I mean? They work hard and then they play harder. You know what I mean? And I can imagine there's obviously some exceptions to that, but I guess my question is there a lot of truth to those stereotypes, or did you find there's more exceptions now, or has that changed over time? Like, I'm talking 10, 15 years ago. That was like a thing that you'd hear. It'd be like, yeah, they go work hard, come out, play harder, blow all your cash, go back. But it seems from just different people I know and friends that go out there to work and come back, it seems like there's a bit more responsibility happening, but that could be just my perception, right?
I think, like you said, both. I think it's based on the individual. I've done quite well for myself.
Pipeline Gang and Rocky Mountain House used to get fucked right up on the regular, and I'd have to listen to them get all fucked up, and then they'd be working the side booms and dropping the pipe in while I'm rapping it, and I know they've been up all night. So
it's a normal thing, man.
It definitely has its place in that culture, and I don't advocate that shit at all, because that wasn't
shut up and sack up and
it's out there, right?
Yeah.
There was a time when I did it, right? When you're young, you're making money. I remember going to Fort McMurray, staying at the McMurray Inn, probably the same room as Diener and
Terry and Diener.
Yeah, Terry. Yeah.
Fubar 2, by the way, is a perfect example of island or of oil field life. There's a lot of reality in there.
That movie is
right.
Shockingly accurate.
Shockingly accurate. Unfortunately.
Hide behind the trucks and just smash my leg with a sledgehammer.
That's what you're talking about. Someone wants a month off. They're going to drop a skid on their leg and get their buddy in the front end loader to run it over slightly. And got my Steelies on. I'll be all right.
But on that, I remember going to Fort McMurray and staying at the McMurray Inn and living paycheck to paycheck because we were spending our monies in the bar. And you're
wealthy,
like,
man. You're
in Fort McMurray working, spending your money to go home broke. It was just ridiculous. But you had a good time doing it. A lot of my buddies traveled with me.
There's got to be coping when you're isolated out there, and there's like literally no fun. There's got to be. So you're probably just going to take whatever's there, and if it's a titty bar or whatever it is,
usually a casino and a titty bar.
Shouts out to the Saddle Sore in Rocky Mountain House. That culture and having fun on the pipeline and shit is part of it too. And we were laughing the other day about guys playing music and you'd be dancing and having choreographed this and that, and the drive and the time away from when you're not working, that kind of the drive itself, the Coquihalla, like we were laughing before. Tony Yeo was recently here doing a set of shows, and he talked about the Okanagan Highway being the scariest shit of his life. And that's the other side of it that people don't think of, is like, the job is dangerous when you're on site, but to get to fucking work sometimes is as crazy and dangerous as anything else that you're going to do out there. Yeah.
The most
Highway 40, some of those places that you're out there driving.
Yeah. Well, look at us, Darcy, and like we worked our ass off when we were with Challen. Like we went from job to job to job
100%.
for years, and generally 17 days on, 4 off. While we're getting
Sometimes
off
even 24 and 4.
and lots of 24s, and getting off work at 4 o'clock on Thursday and driving all night to catch the first ferry in the morning. After
You get 2 to 3 days, and then we'd have to drive
turn
back
around, drive
again.
all night to get there in the morning to pipeline,
Yeah.
right? But it's the only way you could see your home, your own bed. But many a times falling asleep at the wheel. Many a times.
God damn, I'm glad I went to college. Shit.
I had this conversation recently with somebody, and I'm like, take the advice. You know, like, I've lived it. You don't want to do what I did. You know, there was times when I hated it. I absolutely hated it. But there's times when I loved it too, right?
Yeah. No sense in no sense in getting these young guys to reinvent the wheel. But then again, when you're coming up young, you know everything.
Well, that's the problem.
You're,
That's what I'm
you're
trying to tell
invincible.
them.
Yeah, exactly.
Listen to what I'm
it's the
telling
demographic.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Times have changed. It's half the reason we can't find people,
Yeah.
right? They want to sit at work from home. Fuck, so do I.
Can't put the pipe in the ground from home.
No, and there's only a very small percentage of the project that's able to work from home. Takes a long time to get to that seat, you know.
I got one for you, just for culturally kind of what's going on in North America right now. And you had to mention it.
No, I didn't. Don't put.
Or no, you didn't mention it.
That's right.
You did. But are you seeing more? Are you seeing more or less or the same females in the industry? Like
There's some badass chicks that work in the oil field.
I mean,
I know that firsthand.
I believe there's the odd, but I mean, consider like more paper pushing, or are you seeing lots of females in there getting just as dirty, not messing around?
You're starting to more and more.
Probably bigger balls than a lot of guys, I can imagine.
I actually had a conversation with a guy today talking about work and, you know, potentially bringing him out to a project, and he was like, Trans Mountain has 1,000 inspectors out there. Well, out of those 1,000 inspectors, probably only maybe 200 are actually qualified to be in those positions. There's so much major project work going on right now. If you have,
kind of have to qualify people for it, rather than finding
like
qualified
fucking
people.
no. I worked at a golf course for 15 years, but I went and took this fucking 3-month course. Well, that's 3-month course that fucking everybody else doesn't have. So you're hired at fucking $1,100 a day, right? One of the guys was like, literally, she was a stripper last week, and this week she's a weld inspector. Literally. But
just as a Swiss Army woman,
She knows something
good for
about,
her.
she knows
Don't
something
get me
about
wrong.
gap work, I guess.
don't get me wrong, good for her. But
Jill of all trades, man. I like her already.
But the problem is that they're going to have a wake-up call when that project's done, and there's, you know, they think they've stepped into a career. Well, no, you stepped into you lucked out for 3 years because there's a major project, $30 billion project going on, but those seats are going to be few and far between. Like, I look for people that have, you know, 10 years experience. Well, they say, well, I pipelined for 10 years. No, I need someone who's been a leader for 10 years, pipelined for 20, you know, and that, you know, with the aging workforce, like it's hard to find those people.
I felt like it was soft Gen Z's coming in, and then the old hardworking heads, boomers or Gen Xers, getting older.
I felt like it was pretty equal opportunity in terms of hiring out there too. Like, you do see a lot of women that work out there from everywhere, from just you know what, less in the like starting off doing just physical labor, more so like welders or, you know, project leaders, or, you know, I had a job. We were in Grand Cache and we were working, and she was the head of the whole thing, and she was awesome and a lot of fun, and was able to bring a different aspect to the whole job than maybe a dude would have, because we were all dudes working on that. And I think there's room for that. You know, you can have I know more men bitches than female bitches, and you can have men bitches that run a job and make your whole life at work a fucking nightmare, and you can have the same happen with females. But I find in that industry that if females want to work that industry, they have a way of, like, you know, let's just call it sacking up and showing up with the dudes and holding their weight. So I think it's absolutely somewhere that you see that ability and that option. That's why I asked you earlier, a male or a female who wants to get paid for that hard work from out here, how do they go out there and get that job? So yeah, real quick, guys, I want to take a second and throw the pass over to my man Corey, because, you know, we missed him in episode 1, and we're going to be doing something called the Coyote Corner. Today, I'm just going to let him take the reins and let you know what's going on.
So what's up, everybody? It's good to be here. I did miss the pilot episode. Welcome to Coyote Corner is what I want to call it. And just going to touch up on a bit of what I'm going through right now. I mean, this is definitely not a fashion accessory, as you can tell. I've been going at a battle with Hodgkin's lymphoma for over 4 years now, and it started off with diagnosis, surgery, and then eventually down the road later on chemo. I mean, I've had more doctors in me than Real Housewives. Like they've tampered all through me. So you haven't really seen me a lot. What's that?
I said multiple fingers.
Multiple fingers. Oh man. Dignity is man-made. Dignity is a man-made concept, and that goes out the window when you're staying in the hospital. So I haven't been as active as I'd like to be in the stand-up comedy, battle rap, all of the things that I like to do. But I just want to shed light on locally here, Van Isle Pod, right? Locally in Nanaimo, the resources for cancer patients is slim to none, and sometimes completely non-existent, and especially surrounding mental health and how to navigate this. I mean, we just only recently in the last few years got a small cancer clinic where people can get chemo here in town, and without having to go down island to do so. So just a little shout out. It is it's not something that there's any words in the English language can describe what someone goes through and endures through intense chemotherapy and things like that. So I just want to shed light on the fact that if you have the opportunity to, and you can, and you won't, I'd love to see people donate to the cancer clinics here on the island, especially Nanaimo or NRGH, so we can make it just make it a lot more bearable, because there's nothing worse than having to travel when you are this ill to get better care in a different town. So a lot of Coyote Corners in the future. It'll be a lot more lighthearted, a lot more funny. But this is just something I hold dear to my heart, and I'm in the middle of. Actually, I'm past the middle. I'm headed towards the end of my treatment. I think I got about 4 more to go. Then they'll throw me in a scanner, and hopefully that's it. And I'll start to grow that hair back and all that good stuff. But yeah, cancer clinic, NRGH, locally here on the island. Donate money if you can, and let's get some resources. And I myself work in the mental health field, and I take it. Once I'm done treatment, I'm going to take it as a personal mission to make as many resources as I can possible for anybody going through cancer. So donate. Thanks, guys.
It might only be me and Justin, but we'll give that a round of applause, dude.
Thank you.
Thank you for showing the bravery you've shown in this last year to be transparent about your story. And man, all I can say is we're all obviously right behind you, pushing you to get through this shit. And I'm happy to have you here as my teammate. So that's what's up, man. The Coyote Corner will get a little lighthearted, as you say, as we go forward. But I wanted you guys to know what's going on with my man. So before we get wrapped up here, Jay-Z, and it's not Hova. It's not my man Hove across the table. That interview will happen sometime, but slightly less recognizable. No, his last name is Zubkowski. Jay-Z. That's what
I might get that Jehovah interview before you.
That's what they call him on lease. Okay, the big shots they call him. Is there any reason, anything that you've seen in your life that you think that Canadians and this oil industry might end up, coming to some type of fruition for what we talked about with refineries and for being able to produce a little bit of our own product here? Or is this something that you have to exist in that workspace that you're in, knowing that ultimately that's something we're never going to tackle in this country?
We do have a few refineries. It's very similar to the whole log export thing. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Cut the trees down, send them to the U.S., and then buy them back for fucking 3 times as much. Mm-hmm. Doesn't sound like a very good business model. We do the same thing with oil. Trans Mountain and the Coastal GasLink pipelines are going to change that, right? I think I read today there's in the last it's the busiest drilling season as it has been in the last 5 years in Alberta. 200 rigs are drilling wells out there. That's a lot. Because we have potentially those new markets with the Trans Mountain and Coastal GasLink pipelines. And there's other ones. They're talking about doing more LNG. Pembina's looking at an LNG plant now.
LNG is liquid natural gas for the people listening. Yeah.
Yep. They're building one in Squamish. Still not started execution, but very close. A smaller one. But there's also, the whole switch to clean energy with hydrogen. That's going to be a big one, right? Natural gas is clean, misinformation around it. I mean, there's a lot of negative and controversy over fracking. Misinformation.
That's something we didn't cover. We'll have you again in because there's a couple things we didn't hit today that we'll go over, but that's something we'll go over too in the future. And we'll talk about your fight, your love for the fights too. We didn't get there today, but an hour gets burned up quick. But
it goes fast.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of curious on is what the next step looks like. Are we moving towards a space where we're going to be a little more self-reliant and able to maybe turn that profit for our national economy a bit more, or are we just in this hamster wheel of what we see right now?
No, I think it'll get better for us. I think it has to. I mean, it can't get worse.
Well put.
There's a lot of focus right now around carbon capture. The government's giving grants out for clean energy. The big oil producers in Fort McMurray have all banded together to build a new pipeline from Fort McMurray down to Edmonton area. It's going to be carbon capture.
What does carbon capture mean?
So, the whole climate change movement they're saying is based on increased pollution, carbon dioxide,
emissions in the air.
Emissions. Yeah. So they're looking at capturing that carbon out of the air and then essentially using it in other ways.
Oh, okay.
Recycling that shit.
Recycling it, basically.
That's fucking crazy.
They have one in Squamish right now. But the government is, like I said, that Pathways, it's called Pathways Pipeline, if anyone wants to do some research on it, but it's a big one that the big producers in McMurray are working on. And
wild. So
yeah, that's, the future is bright. I think, people say we're going to run out of oil. We're not going to run out of oil in your children's lifetime. It's just misinformation. It's not going to happen. The Saudis have trillions and trillions of barrels of oil that we haven't touched yet. And so do we, wind energy, not as good as people think. You need wind.
Yeah.
Those units only last about 20 years. Well, they're made of oil and gas products, plastic and steel and all those things.
Right, petroleum. Yeah, I like Vaseline.
Helicopters to defrost them in the winter when they freeze up using the ab fuel. Like it's just there's so much misinformation, and people, they look through, they see what they want to see, and they look through, they have those
their own filters.
Their own filters.
Yep, absolutely. And some people you just can't change their mind.
But people aren't going to change mine. It works both ways. Like, yeah, you're pretty. The thing is that it depends what the argument is. If I don't know much about it, then maybe you can change my mind. But when it comes to something like this, I mean, you better have a pretty strong argument to be able to convince.
It's almost like if you're against oil, if you're against all of that stuff, it's like it's like, okay. Quit using it, or go and work up there for a year. Yeah. Find out what you learn rather than what you read on the Google machine.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest pet peeves is the guy that drives his fucking car to the protest to bitch about oil and gas. Yeah. It's like, dude, come on. Like
wearing his aviators.
Yeah. Yeah.
All petroleum product. Yeah, that's what I'm pretty sure there's petroleum product in my fucking native necklace. So I mean, I'm gonna just shut the fuck up just for a minute because I don't know enough,
I think that I'll cut it there because we can do a part 2 of this and get into a little bit more about you yourself instead of just the whole business. But I really wanted to bring this information to the forefront, and I think a lot of people are gonna, and I hope that you have some value after watching this today. And before we get finished up, a couple of things for you, man. First of all, you've got the Van Isle Pod cocktail glass
full of whiskey.
That's right. Yeah, we've had ourselves a couple of bowls of loudmouth soup here tonight. There's a little something in there. Feel free to dig through there. What you won't find in there is my friends over at the Nanaimo Night Owls have invited you to bring out a few friends for a game here this spring.
Awesome.
I'll get those tickets into your hand. The glass is courtesy of Coyote Custom Creations. That's my man Corey right here that does the etching.
Thanks for the plug. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. And a couple of Island Royalty pieces, hat, t-shirt, and there's something extra in there. If you want to see unicorns, if you and a friend want to go on a little astro travel, those are courtesy of my friends over at Lush
Awesome.
Rooms. So
awesome.
all that plus the tickets for the game will get you sorted out. And now we're going to do our final kind of finale here, and that's called Rapid Fire. And we're going to just fire a few things at you. You're going to give me the answer as quick as you come up with it. And then we're going to wrap this thing up. That sound good to you?
Sounds good, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
So we talked a lot about the career in oil fields. So we're going to start with pipeline or facility?
Pipeline.
Pipeline. Jeans or sweats?
Jeans.
Browns or Cactus Club?
Wow. Browns.
Browns. So always.
Simpsons or Family Guy?
Simpsons.
McLaren or Ferrari?
Wow. That's a tough one because
you got him. See, it's tough because he can afford each of them. So he's like, which one? It's not some dream shit. It's I've been in the McLaren with him, and we don't have the Ferrari in the driveway anymore. There's a different one sitting there now. Ferrari or McLaren, man?
Well, I would honestly say Ferrari.
Yeah.
Well, the McLarens they're in that price range that's doable. Ferraris are still out there.
So sidebar, we'll get back to rapid fire. What's the next car? If you got the what is it?
I got the C8.
The C8 Corvette.
Yeah, had crashed the McLaren 3 times in 8 months, so it was time to get rid of that. And got the Corvette.
Not badly, but like even a small crash is 30 grand.
We are not the same. We are not the same. What am I doing with my life?
Well, that comes to that story, Darcy, we talked about earlier about
must be nice, right? Must be nice, Zub.
Yeah.
Right. When people must be nice to work your ass off for many years.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sacrificing your body and all that shit.
Yeah. And my marriage, right? My time with my daughter, fucking barbecues, like being away from home is tough.
Yeah. Next car.
McLaren.
Golf or auto racing?
Oh, yeah.
I know that's a tough one for you. Yeah. Okay. Field or office? And for those that don't know, what I mean by that is oil field out on the ice, putting the puck in the net, or office, meaning you're upstairs, you're the GM, you're running the operation. Field or office?
So I used to say I would never work in an office, and I'm a field guy. But I don't ever want to fucking go in the field if I don't have to.
I knew it. I fucking knew it, dude. I seen how clean all your shoes are at your front door.
I put away a toolbox and picked up a briefcase fucking time ago.
Right. And finally, a young man who grew up in beautiful Alberta, lived out there, worked out there, and calls himself an Islander now. Alberta or BC?
Fuck, like that's a tough one.
We're asking real questions here, dude. Okay, you're not on some fucking softball show.
I really love Alberta. I love the prairies.
Yeah,
I do. Yeah.
There's no right or wrong answer. I'm just going to judge you based on your answers.
Yeah. No judgment.
I'm stewing in judgment right now. I'm overflowing with judgment.
Coyote, anything you need to add before we wrap this thing up?
I just want to say thanks for joining us, my man. Like I said, it can be a controversial topic if you let it go there. I think we can skate. I think we skated the fence nicely, and it can be cordial. I've tried to keep a lot of my personal opinions inside, and you've actually changed my mind on a couple of things. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come and be on our podcast, man.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks a lot, guys, man. It was great. I appreciate it. And yeah, I'd love to do a follow-up. There's a lot of information that, I think we can provide people that may change their minds a little bit,
And that's just another thing. If you're out there watching, you want to leave a comment below. If you want to see more, if you got more questions, if we get them back on the show, you can.
What do you want us to ask?
What do you want us to ask? I mean, this is the Van Isle Pod, and if you're living on Vancouver Island, leave a comment, leave some comments, give us some feedback, and we can always follow up with an episode 2.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
There we have it. So on behalf of everybody who was a part of this thing tonight, I'm talking about Island Royalty Apparel. I'm talking about Coyote Corey Custom Creations, other C words that he's probably got in there.
So many C words.
Coyote Custom Creations?
It's Coyote. Originally, it's just
he doesn't even fucking
Coyote
know
Creations.
What it is.
It's Coyote Corey Coyote Corey Creations on Facebook. I do custom glass etching. A lot of my work is
Stay off my whiskey, man.
a lot of my work is First Nations based, but I can pretty much do anything. So hit me up on Facebook, Coyote Corey Creations, and I can help you out there.
I'm going to holler at Lushrooms and the real MJPC. Thank you to both of you guys as well. Of course, my friends over at the Nanaimo Night Owls, we've got a 10-foot tall announcement coming here in the next couple of weeks that is going to knock some socks off that I'm excited about. Thank all of you guys, as well as Richard Scott, everybody here at the Globe Live studio, my man Bryce Hills, a.k.a. Brisla Music behind the dials, for Justin Zubkowski, my co-host Corey Rasmussen, it's your boy Details, a.k.a. Darcy, and I'm here with the Van Isle Pod. That's a wrap. There we have it.
There we have it. That wasn't so bad, was it?
That was good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's island life.